So one of the things that needs to be taken into account is any design concept that's developed has to be able to have flexibility in being able to accommodate females throughout the facility or a larger part of the facility than historically has ever been considered. Well, your existing jail, you know, where you probably have like one cell block now for females? Or?
We have actually an entire floor plus one large cell on the second floor, right? Staff?
We have probably 70 females right now, so that's...
Yeah, we want to be 60, 70. The entire third floor is female population, and then there's a 12-person cell on second that we're using, right?
We're still all on the third floor.
It's
primarily one whole side building.
Can you say what you can attribute the high percentage in Muskegon County compared to the national average?
Oh, I wish I knew. You know, I think there's a lot of factors. I don't have any empirical data to back it up, but I think the drug use is fairly prevalent in the population. There's a lot of single parent mothers that struggle to make it to support their families.
Is overcrowding less of an issue with the females, so you just don't have to release them as often? You know, with a bar, or do you?
No, it's not less of an issue. It, you know, the releases are not based on gender,
okay.
So it's basically based on.
Even though you have to segregate them.
Yeah, they have to segregate it, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and that becomes a real challenge. There's also some management challenges that go with females that are different from males. And there's some new federal legislation that just took effect at the federal level, which will hit us at the local level next year, called the Prison Rape Elimination Act. It's a 248-page law. If you ever want to put yourself to sleep at night, just pull it up on the computer and start reading through it. But that's going to impact our management philosophy for females pretty considerably.
Yes, sir.
You had a slide up there before that indicated there was 180 people in jail for obstructing justice. Can we get a lot more of a detailed breakdown as to what they're actually what's happening in capacity right there in this office?
Well, the sheriff addressed that a little bit. I don't know if you know, since it is, he kind of defined it as kind of a catch-all for a number of other things. We'll see what we can do.
We can get more detail, but I don't know how.
I mean, Joe, I think we have to hear that question.
Pardon?
I think we have to hear the question.
Roasting?
Yes, how long can you hold a person in the county jail? Is it a year, 5 years, or what? What's the time frame?
You want to answer that? How long you keep somebody in the jail?
Actually, the prosecutor can answer that. But a jail originally was designed for a year or less for misdemeanor population, which generally, now again, there's a lot of other things that come in this, but generally, it's a misdemeanor crime is a year or less in the county jail. Anything over a year generally is considered a felony, and that makes them eligible for the Department of Corrections or the state prison system. As has been mentioned, the trend has been that a lot of lower level felonies are now being locked out of the prison system and kept at the county level. We've had a couple of people in jail up to 3 years for various reasons. They're in there on a sentence, but while they're in there on a sentence, a new crime, they're charged with a new crime through some ongoing investigation where they're implicated, so they become not only a sentenced inmate, but now they're also a pretrial inmate. They maybe have been held on some type of witness hold for a court trial, a material witness charge, or a material witness bond, rather. So, you know, there's no real upper end limit that says, okay, when you hit 372 days, you can't be in jail anymore. There's no upper end limit. It's all subjective to whatever the particular case may be.
Yes, ma'am.
This is the sheriff. You said it was 70 females in jail now?
Right.
About 70?
About, yeah.
Okay, how many of those are sentenced and how many would you say are waiting for trial, or would it be more than half?
That I cannot
of
tell
them?
off the top of my head, but it's easy enough to find out, so.
Okay,
And keep in mind, there's also that mixed population that are sentenced, but they also have a new charge that, again, they're dealing with a new charge, so there's kind of that crossover population, and that's not just for females, obviously, that's for male population.
okay.
And there's some that are sentenced on a misdemeanor, but now have a new felony they're dealing with, and so on and so forth, all different combinations.
You said 43% are black and 6% are white? Is that-
I think they go down to 56%.
56, 43.
Okay, and out of that 43% black, does that include the females also?
Yeah, that's,
Thank you.
of course, we recognize, I think everybody recognizes that, 43% of the jail population, but the population breakdown in the county doesn't mirror what we have in the jail. I think we all understand.
And most of those in there, you say, women for drug abuse?
I just throw that out there as one of the factors that I feel drives this. I don't have any, again, I don't have any empirical data to back up why the female population is in there and what the prevailing reasons are.
And do you have every woman's place and Westminster Therapy and all them to help with the females?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I want to move on to this last slide for a second.
One last question here.
Okay.
Just a quick question. This classification piece seems to be huge. When you talk about numbers and why you would need, what type of facility you would need. And I haven't heard it really addressed. I know you say you keep saying you're going to get to it, because I think there's some management issues about what is being classified as criminal offense and what is really a mental issue, and what, and how long they stay and how that impacts all of these dollars that are being spent to how someone really, it's not helping them to be in jail, so they will go back out and create, because you never address the real issue. So that's how you're underusing the facilities that we already have. That's where I'm saying.
I guess I'm not quite.
You're not hearing me? Oh, okay. The classification, right there, you have it up there.
Right.
Other diversion programs, they're being underused, I think, because the first thing is just to get them off the street and you release them. They're not released to these programs at all. They're just back to the street.
Oh, right.
Because the assessment is not proper.
The whole reentry piece is something we're working hard on.
Well, how does that transfer over to dollars needed for a jail? And what size you need? That may not be.
Well, because we're
the facility you need.
still dealing with them in the facility.
Let's start some discussion on these diversion.
Yeah,
Because that was a question that was first raised over here. Let's list what are the diversions currently being used in Muskegon County. Somebody gets arrested.
Parent statements.
Pardon?
Parent statements.
Appearance tickets. Okay. Anybody else?
Tether.
Tether. That's based on electronic monitoring. Is what something you take. Like tethering or electronic monitoring is bracelets and so forth, and home detention kind of activity. Now let me ask the question on the tethering. Is that being used now? And how many people do we think we have on that kind of program? And how? Let's talk about how you think that might be implemented to divert people from jail.
It's being used in some instances at the pretrial level in lieu of holding somebody in jail on bond. Some judges are okay with putting some of that electronic monitoring. The actual sentence, I don't think we have anybody. I don't think we have anybody in a sentence classification that's on ELD right now under ECM.
What's the national norm on that?
I don't know.
It's really a regional difference.
It is like the sheriff says, a lot of it depends on the philosophy of the judge. And you get a change in judges, and then you get a change in philosophy of the whole program. And so it's kind of across the board.
there is a trend more and more to use that. Again, it's hard, I mean, or we go to discussion now, we'll say the discussion, there's a lot of other issues that go along with that our current system doesn't have in place yet, so.
Yes, sir.
Is that part of the return?
Well, that's, yeah. I mean, that's what we're asking. What are those programs to move these people out of the jail?
We have sobriety court, which has shown some really good successes, both at the district and now circuit court levels.
Is that KPAP? Was that?
No, KPAP is a different
Is that not
process.
used? Different, okay.
That we consider an acclimation.
It's me, okay, yeah. Teen Challenge?
To acclimate that release into the community again.
Oh, you're talking like about the prison releases?
Sobriety court could be part of a reentry concept, yes, because there is specific follow-up that those participants have to do. So, yeah, I think that's what you're asking. There's a retail fraud diversion function at the prosecutor's level that we help manage within our community corrections office. Retail fraud diversion.
Versus community.
Conflict.
Versus community mental health.
Yeah, we have mental health diversions. I'm sorry?
What is the diversion for the retail fraud? What is the alternative?
But what was it? I didn't hear the question.
Retail fraud diversion, what is that?
The retail fraud diversion is run through our office. Essentially, we catch it at the warrant stage so that when the police department drop the warrants off, we're not issuing those warrants right away. And so that means that they're not being arrested and put in jail. They're put through a process and a program with the idea of, as long as they go through the program, they will not end up being charged with retail fraud. So we're trying to keep these low-level misdemeanors out of the jail system. And we started with the retail fraud, and we're working on making that a bigger program within the office. Some driving offenses I can see in the future being a part of that, because that plugs up the jail on a routine basis. And so we're working on that. This is kind of a pilot program we started with this year, and we're seeing how it works, and so far it's been pretty successful. Does that answer your question?
Any other, yes, sir?
For purposes of future discussion, the county is working on trying to establish a veterans court
Yes.
for diversion.
Yeah, that's court. Also, one of the things that was implemented is just over a year or so ago, we looked at some of our statistics, or jail statistics. I got to get up. A big part of the population were failed to appear at the misdemeanor level, failed to appear. So we being the system, different judges and court administrators, myself, prosecutor, those main players in the system, if you will, implemented a notification system for people on their court date appearance. Because a lot of failed to appears were people not showing up for their next court appearance. And that's what an FTA is. And so what we have in place is it's kind of like a doctor's office. I'm calling you to remind you that you have a doctor's appointment, tomorrow. We have that in place through district court that makes the phone calls and says, okay, your next court appearance date is such and such a date, such and such a time, such and such a court. And I wasn't thinking I could have brought some of the statistics, but we've seen a definitive drop in the misdemeanor level FTAs.
We have a community mental health court on an informal basis too.
We do. We have a district court judge who's taken it upon herself to operate a quasi-mental health court. It's something that she's not been paid any extra for. It's just something that she has a real passion for, and that has shown some progress, shown some benefits. Like Mr. LVR said, we are in the process of implementing the Veterans Court. We have a commitment from the judge to deal with that. We have 2 judges now with the sobriety court. We do some diversionary efforts through Office of Community Corrections, Office of Community Alternatives. However, keep in mind, someone mentioned the Public Act 511 programs. Those Public Act 511, or otherwise known as Community Corrections, now known as Community Alternatives, keep changing at the state level. There's some defined criteria that a person has to meet in order to be eligible to participate in the Office of Community Alternatives programming. And that's where we partner a lot with KPEP. Someone mentioned KPEP. They see a lot of that population. KPEP.
Would probation be also part of that conversion system?
Probation's a little different animal in that that deals specifically with a sentenced inmate. It's either at district court level or state level probation. State level probation deals a lot with KPEP as part of their programming, and it could be considered a diversion in terms of a judge who deals with a probation violator at the felony level, at the state level, may either say, okay, you got 3 days in jail and then 45 days at KPEP, or 3 days in jail suspended if you complete 45 days in jail at KPEP. So there is a diversionary component to that.
Is that a tracking mechanism to ensure that these releases are being properly implemented into the community again? As far as in terms of education?
There is, in the sense that if you go to KPEP, you're required to complete a structured curriculum through KPEP. Some cognitive skill stuff, some job search and job training things, and behavioral stuff. If you don't complete that successfully, basically KPEP brings you back to the jail, and then you sit in jail for the duration of whatever that sentence was that the judge handed down on you. So I don't know if that answers your question. Yes, sir. Commissioner.
You know, I've touched on a while that my name is Louis McMurray. I'm a former commissioner here. But I am not really up to date when we talk about making a system better. What orientation is going to be given to prisoners to know how they can improve things going through this process? And a lot of times we lay the law out there, but we don't sit down and explain the system as it starts. And I don't know if we looked at our assessment of how we've been doing over the past years with this prison system. But there are a lot of things that we're just dumping on them. But we're not really, I mean, we give them their rights and everything. But there is some way we need to start out to instruct them how to be successful. And we talked about I think one of our aims here was one to reduce people coming back. Do they understand how to be able to do that by us putting a definite point on these are the things that you can do to improve while you're here? I listened to the thing where it talked about the judges making a decision who goes out and who stays in. Well, the thing about it is, have they been instructed? A lot of people have not received the instructions to be able to do that. We're getting people in now who have been out running by themselves for a long time. And I know we get people that come in and we say there are people like that, and we're making a decision on what a certain level of people said. But what have we did, and that's the only way we're going to make the change, is to have people to be educated in the facts of being a criminal, and then have some idea of what it takes to be able to do that. I'm probably being a little out of.
No, I think what you're talking about is the whole reentry concept, is getting out, and again, I mean, we use prison and jail interchangeably just for sake of ease of discussion, but prisons and jails are completely different institutions, and I don't want to get into that. But you're talking clearly about the whole reentry. Once they're leaving jail, what's in place for them back in the community that is going to help correct whatever behavior it was that got them to jail in the first place? That's a huge need, and that is something we are working. There's other people here that will back me up on this. We've started to piece that together through some of these other diversion efforts that we've got up and running, but there's still a lot of pieces we've got to pull into place, and that is all kind of taking place behind the scenes, because we're trying to figure out number one, how to fund it, and number two, what providers are out there that can help us provide those different services, whether it be job, transportation, or housing, or substance abuse, or anger management, or whatever. Whatever.
Well, I think the one point we missed, we should invite criminal activity to this meeting.
Well, the other thing I don't want to get lost in this whole discussion is there's another population out there that we have to bear in mind, and that's the victim. We're talking about, we got to think about what is the victim's perception once a crime's been committed against them. What is their take on all this? Okay, we have to recognize that there's an expectation often on the victim's part that a person is going to serve their time in jail. Okay, if the judge says they're going to do 90 days in jail, there's an expectation for the victim that that person is going to do 90 days in jail. If they don't do 90 days in jail, then what other alternatives are out there that's gonna compensate the victim, so to speak? So I don't want you guys, anyone, not just this audience, but anyone, to lose sight of the victim population.
I'd like to add that there's a community that gets hurt. It's not just the victim.
I agree.
It's an entire community, and the perception of that community changes drastically when those crimes occur.
Great point. Yes, sir.
If you have a situation where there's no victim, such as a possession of marijuana, driving on both licenses suspended, failing to register as a sex offender, is that as important that that person needs to be classified as somebody where there is a victim, say with a breaking and entering?
I don't know. I mean, I can't answer that. That's something that's up to the prosecutor, the judges to make that kind of determination.
I want to know what any judge would like to be his judge. Because Chair Ross has done an excellent job of explaining things. But most of these issues, to me, sounds like they're within the authority of the judge.
Well, everybody's been invited. I mean, this is, and I must say, and I probably should just start. I am not thrilled to see this amount of people. I had dreams about we're going to have this meeting and nobody's going to come, and then what are we going to do? So thank you all for participating.
Court administrators.
Yeah, I mean, there are representatives from the courts here. I recognize a few faces, not specifically judges. Now keep in mind, you know, judges are busy people. They're on the bench. They're handling these cases that are backlogged and dealing with my overcrowding issues. I know the jail coordinator met with judges today trying to get some relief from the crowding situation we have. So judges are busy people. I'm sure they're not shunning this intentionally. Okay, they're not just thumbing their nose at this whole process, but they have priorities that they have to deal with. And there's there's at least one court administrator here. There's some other court workers that, if they want to weigh in on any of this, feel free. I don't want to hog up the whole conversation.
I'm going to take one more question here before we try to do a little exercise here.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of what I think are very good ideas of ways that we can make the jail more efficient and move people out quickly, or maybe not put them in the jail if it makes certain sense. We've got a newly elected prosecutor says he's got some ideas that looks like they've made successful in reducing the people going into the jail. The sheriff has suggested some ideas. There's talk of some of the judges who are currently running about having a drug court, which would reduce the numbers of people going into jail. Doesn't it seem to make sense to at least consider, before we go ahead and build a jail, fund the jail, to consider these good ideas, to have a community discussion about ways that that we as a community can come up with ideas to reduce the numbers of people that are forced to go into the jail, rather than go bulldozing ahead with a 600-person jail that we know will fill up instantly and will negate any need for ideas to reduce numbers of people in the jail.